Hey, this is Mark Fraire, the Director of Dane County Arts and Cultural Affairs, also known as Dane Arts, talking with Linda on the podcast of The Layered Onion to showcase and show how important the arts are to our community. The work that we do at Dane Arts, certainly, the acquisition of a full-time staff person with Augusta has been phenomenal in terms of she taking over the day-to-day practices of the work, the grant program, the call for artists for the calendar and poster. And there's a ordinance that we have to produce the poster each year, which posters to me is like, I do the posters for Forward Madison, hire the artists to do the game day posters that I initiated with them in 2019, which is a great success. The posters themselves, people come to the games now with tubes so they can roll up their posters to take home with them so they don't ruin them during the game. Artists are now able to set up booths and sell their work and sign the posters, which people want to do when they get these posters. It's amazing. It's a co-working space. Used to be Pieces Unlimited, the furniture store. And then Willie Street Co-op decided to take over management of that space, and it's a full kitchen, so they do a lot of cooking demonstrations. Most of their cooking programs sell out. They keep them really small, but a really state-of-the-art kitchen. But the space itself, we converted into a gallery. Aubergine's idea was to have a gallery space there, and we've done a number of events. Very affordable. The beauty of it beyond the space itself and the use of the space is it's right next to Cafe Coda, which is still in existence, and we hope for Cafe Coda to continue because it's one of the few, owners of color run by Hana, other than Gamma Ray Bar. And now there's a new place called Brunel, which is run by Rita Adair, which is a sports bar doing some kind of events. The work with Aubergine has been fabulous. We've done poster calendar events there. We've done pop-up markets. I'd like to do an improv workshops. That's what I'd like to do more. If you're talking about my work particularly, is to do more comedy and improv workshops for businesses to engage them more, because we see a lack of engagement from the business community still. And all the fundraising that I do, and thank you for Association of Fundraising Professionals, AFP in Madison, because that chapter of folks are really sincere and engaged in raising money. And it's really, I don't know how much money you raise. It's really a challenge to get out there and raise money, but they do this every day. And every one of them could be lying to me, but every one of them speaks of the love that they have for fundraising and the joy it brings to them to do that. I really appreciate AFP, Aubergine Gallery, the poster calendar that we still do, the work starting block when we have the artist in residency here still going on, that Dane Arts pays full coverage of 1 year to be an artist in resident here, gives you full access to starting block, which is an amazing space, and allowing them to really focus on the business of art. So we shifted more from wellness education in certain centers to artists, take care of yourselves. Here are workshops on how to better manage your stress, how to better manage strategic planning and the work that you do, how to think more collaboratively so that you feel better about being out in public and engaging with others. But in 2026, I kind of shifted now to a real focus on arts education and what we're doing with youth programming and what artists are doing in those communities. What are you doing in an educational setting? What are you doing to make our community stronger? And still a component of the business of art. So I have Gloria Lassids-Billings. Do you know Dr. Lassids-Billings? International educator, UW-Madison, was, I think, Educator of the Year internationally, and there's only one International Educator of the Year, and it was Dr. Lassids-Billings 1 year. But she's a critical race theorist. She works at pedagogy related to critical race theory and what's happening in our systems related to educational opportunities for lots of people who are marginalized and left out of the educational setting. So, critical race theory is being marginalized and being really mistreated by a certain segment of this population, but she's been really strong in understanding how to help change the system in educational settings. They've really been oppressing many, many folks, not just folks of color, but folks with limited access to higher ed. And the other keynote speaker that I have is Theo Edmonds, who's he's a cultural futurist, is how he refers to himself. And he works with artists and nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations on understanding innovation and creativity in the workplace. and he's worked with healthcare systems, educational settings, but his work is about ways to use AI technology and the arts and artists who are the forefront leaders in the change of our systems as we move forward. So he'll be a keynote speaker on Friday morning. And I still have Dr. Roberto Rivera, who's here in Madison, who just came out with his book, Hip Hop and Wellness, Facing the Challenging Times in Which We Live Today. And this is all about his work around the world in which he's created and used hip hop as a leading form to change communities. He's done it in Cape Town, South Africa. He's done it in New Zealand. He's got a place in San Jose that he works with, the school system throughout the whole district. And one of the beautiful things that happened at our conference last year with Roberto, he got some of his hip hop artist colleagues together, one from South Africa, Georgia, Chicago, New York. They came together for the session, and Madison. They did a session on their lives as children who grew up without fathers and the impact that had on boys without fathers growing up. And they all found the arts as an answer to these issues that was really creating havoc in their lives. And today they are all educators. And this is not hip hop about negative activities. This is really positive growth for our community. So Roberto Rivera, Dr. Lasses Billings, Theo Edmonds will be keynotes and presenters. So I'm excited about the possibilities to get artists and others there, educators, non-artists, administrators, to be a part of this conference. And it's also more about what are artists doing to better the lives of our community, the folks in our communities. Not so much how do you make yourself a better business person in the arts. Here it's more about what are you doing in certain arenas, using the arts as a tool to make our community stronger. One of the panels is going to be, and I just got confirmation, with Wisconsin Public Media, which has now combined TV and radio under Wisconsin Public Media because of all the federal cuts, and what challenges they are facing. Now, I'm assuming most of my participants and attendees will be fans of Wisconsin Public Media. So they are making some significant changes, and I want them to present to the attendees what changes they are making and how they're going to move forward with the chaos that we're facing on a federal level. So I'm excited about Jordan Sigler, who's the interim CEO, being a part of this conference, and whatever panelists he can get from Wisconsin Public Media to also be a part. We're at Arts and Literature Laboratory and Starting Block Madison, and Arts and Lit Lab is a pretty small space. We got well over 200 last year, and it was just enormous work to make it happen without so much confusion and chaos. So I'm trying to refine it, be a little bit more specific and strategic about what we do, but a growing work in arts and education, arts and community, because you and I both know that that's what's going to change our community. Public art, for example, you can see the great public art that's starting to take place in Dane County is that people are impacted by when they see public art. They stop, they look at the work, they talk with others, they take a breath, they relieve stress, they relax, they find ways of taking care of themselves. What's missing in our culture today is the lack of empathy on a certain level of folks in this country who think it's nonsense when we know what makes us complete is what makes us complete as an individual, what makes me complete as a person is when I'm engaged in the arts. And I consider sports, what I call sparts and arts, a component of the arts. People are saying, well, we like cooking and food. Well, culinary arts. Everything we do with our hands and our minds and our bodies through the arts just make us better people. And that's what we're trying to do. I've got friends who are now doing more dinner events, getting folks together to have dinner conversations. And not everybody talking, but one person takes 2 or 3 minutes to talk about things that are important to him or her at these dinner conversations of 2025 folks. So we know if we engage others and keep them out in the public, there's less opportunity to be alone or lonely or depressed. We're working with a group out of Atlanta, and I may have said this at the last podcast, called the Social RX Prescription Program. And that's with a number of other entities throughout Dane County and parts of Milwaukee, is that we are trying to get insurance companies to understand that a prescription by a doctor for wellness could be taking a theater class, Go walk in the park, find a way of connecting with other parts of nature or other folks who are creative, because that's the change that makes us feel better and allows us to breathe and succeed. I'm a big proponent of laughter. I love comedy. I love making people laugh, because when you laugh, all that tension is released. Unless you're a crazy wacko, you can't laugh and then do something evil necessarily. It's laughter is a release of that emotion. Kurt Vonnegut Jr. always writes, laughter and crying are releases of the same emotion. So why don't we laugh? You laugh so hard you cry. You cry so hard you laugh. You ever been in those situations? Well, for me, comedy and laughter is a great release and a great motivator for making us feel better about the world we face, because then we can face these challenges. And the conference is, as you noted, about community, is that everybody that I've talked to, and maybe there's some naysayers, maybe there's some folks out there saying that's a bunch of baloney, is just that. They come together, they network, they feel engaged, they feel invigorated, they feel better about the world, and they really appreciate the fact that we're able to do this. And I think we have to do this because I'm a county civil servant. The county should be doing things like this. I mean, my budget is 0.06% of a $9 million operation. Do the numbers. It's not very much. And the county's right now $30 million in debt. We all had to take a cut out of our department budgets to 4%, which is significant for my meager budget. But still, we have to move forward, and we have to create opportunities to get folks together and engaged. And that's what I think is my work at Dane County and Dane Arts, is helping people come together, because when they come together, as the book, the Medici Effect points out by Franz Johansson, is that when you bring different arenas together in one setting, aha moments happen. You've got a mixture of ideas and energies, and poof, great things happen. And that's what we're trying to do. Because we're just completing town meetings with folks on Zoom to hear what they have to say about the impact of the grant program. Sean McKinney, hip-hop artist, and was a first-wave student who's at UW Foundation doing amazing work in the UW Foundation, led this as a commissioner for having these town meetings and these sessions with folks. So we're right now compiling the outcome of that impact. And what we're doing is trying to make it easier. We've changed the whole format of the grant application. We're asking you questions about what you're doing, more so than trying to answer questions where you have to pull it out of the air. One of the great things the Wisconsin Arts Board did years ago was that they changed from what are you doing next year to what did you do last year. They also changed that maybe you can have funding for 3 consecutive years, so you don't have to apply each year. So we're looking at that. We're looking at what changes we can make. So making the application process easier, making sure we're ahead of the game on getting applicants who are applying to know the rules and regulations and requirements. We're government. There's certain rules and requirements you have to follow, but trying to make that process easier and more inclusive and more direct to the applicants. So we've cut out a lot of the jargon that makes it really confusing. We tried to simplify the questions. We're working on even doing more. I would love to have a very easy one-page application, but at county government, that's not always the easiest way. That's not always possible, but we are making changes. And 2027, this office becomes 50 years old. So we're all moving to the rebranding and the grant programs and the changes we're making and what impact we'll have in 2027. So in 2027, we turn 50. The Arts Board turned 50 last year. The Madison Arts Commission turned 50 last year. So something was happening in the 70s when Rick Phelps was the county executive and Paul Soglin was the mayor, that created these entities. 3 to 4 turning 50, and these are huge. Madison Arts Commission, Wisconsin Arts Board, Dane Arts. So something was going on. We'd like to get back to that where there's greater support and funding for the arts, because we're showing in Madison and Dane County, and I've said this before, $350 million plus goes back into the local economy through arts and culture. People move here because of the lakes, bodies of water, the parks, staffed by employees, and the culture arts, led by artists. The recent tourism boom, they're making significant upkicks in the tourism activity because people are coming to Madison and Dane County for the arts. I've said this before, East Washington and all the young people living here want to walk to the Sylvie, to Arts Lit Lab, to all the WISO, My Arts, and all these different places that are creative entities, McPike Park and all the festivals that they have, Even with the loss of Bob Queen, which is really unfortunate, we're still going to see a lot of work in the parks, In the summers, I get asked often, where are you going this summer? Well, I'm going to bike to McPike Park. I'm going to walk down to My Arts. I'm going to go to WISO. I'm going to go to Giant Jones. I'm going to go to All. I'm going to go to Sil. You don't have to leave town in the summer and spring, as you know, out of Madison. People are coming here in droves. And the growth of Madison, oh my gosh, over the next 50 years is going to be enormous. So they're moving here because of the creative and innovative sector that the arts present. But getting businesses and others to understand that has been a real challenge. Many folks don't believe government should be involved in the arts, when I think just the opposite, because we have so many resources available to make the arts flourish. One, they're just not aware of the arts, which is why we're trying to rebrand in 2027, because I can go to, and I do this every day when I talk to people, do you know anything about Dane Arts? No, I don't know what it is. And then when they find out, it's like, oh my gosh, I just did a presentation for Dane by Local, which is a credible entity that's bringing all kinds of businesses together. And even though it was a small turnout because of the snow and being December, we still had 25 folks there. And I'd say 20 of them didn't know anything about Dane Arts. But once they did, it's like, oh my gosh, I want to be involved. I've gotten 2 or 3 folks from that session last week that want to be a part of the conference, volunteering their time. They had no idea Dane Arts was like this. And the other problem we're facing, it's Dane Arts when it's really Dane County Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission. But try and get that on the news. So it's Dane County Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission, Dane Arts. So trying to get more people to understand what we're doing. In fact, I'm working with 5 of the mayors from the major cities are outside of Madison, because Madison is taking care of itself. You've got Carr and Wolf and the Madison Arts Commission, and I think they've done tremendous work, and I think Mayor Satya herself is starting to see the value of the arts. But I met with 5 mayors, the mayor of Sun Prairie, the mayor of Fitchburg, the mayor of Verona, the mayor of Middleton, and the mayor of Monona, to talk about what can Dane Arts do with your cities to help artists who live in your cities to better access to funding to support the work they do for your cities. And they were all very excited. Sun Prairie Mayor has been doing a lot. They've did 8 murals recently this summer that they put up in the city of Sun Prairie, and now the Mayor Stocker wants to do more and is wondering how he can work with other muralists at a greater level to do more art. The public art has an enormous impact. We know the arts impact our communities and provide greater access to making life better for everybody. And I was just talking with the Isthmus, Judy over here, and she says, well, we really want to promote these events that have no cost to the public. And there are plenty of events that have no cost. And people say these are free events. Well, they're not free. They're underwritten and supported. Their costs are being provided by some resource to make it happen. But to make them available to anybody at any time is truly an opportunity. And that's why Madison can be a greater city than it is. The Greater Madison Music City project that we initiated maybe 5-6 years ago with the Urban Community Arts Network and Dr. Reese and Rob Dees, and the city has kind of shifted a bit because there was really a focus on equity and inclusion. And it still is a strong focus. But the city and the funding that they provided wanted to, tourism dollars and hotel dollars, wanted to make it more of a rebranding of the music, what they call the music ecosystem, which I said it's really the music scene, to show just how many people are coming to Madison and Dane County for the arts and music, And I say the arts, which encompasses everything: theater, dance, film, literary performance, history, music. But they're rebranding Madison as a music city. I just don't want, I'm staying involved, even though UCAN has stepped down because they didn't necessarily agree with the process that's going forward over the past couple months, and they suddenly stepped out, which is not for the best of all of us. But as a county employee and staff person, I need to stay engaged because I want to make sure we still keep equity and inclusion as a focus of the work we're doing as a music city. Because most of these venues are owned by, a certain segment of our society that's not as inclusive as it could be, but they all want to be. That's the irony of all this. They all want to be inclusive. They want to be acceptable and diverse. But a lot of them just don't know how to do it, or don't care to make the time to do it. I don't know. But we're trying to make sure that we bring more equity to the music system here and the scene itself. I've often said the only change we can make is the change we make by being there. Often artists want to see the change, but they don't want to participate in the process. So if you're not at the table, you're not going to be presented. Artists need to run for boards, commissions, elected office. For the upcoming gubernatorial race in November next year, they all love the arts and they all talk about it, but what responses I get? We have so many other social issues we need to address. Housing, inequity and this and that, and services and homelessness. I don't know. I'm a firm believer that if we engage the arts at a higher level to all those arenas, we'll solve the issues. You can't, you walk down the street and you see someone that's homeless and I say to myself, how can that person even begin to think about finding employment when he can barely or she can barely find somewhere to change clothes, find somewhere to eat, somewhere to upgrade my own feelings about who I am? So you can find a job and go into an opportunity for employment when you can't even meet your daily basic needs. But I think really the arts are the answer to our social ills, to our jail system, to our educational system, to business entities, because the more you employ the arts and your employees are engaged in the arts, the better they feel about their work. And the better they feel about the work, the better their output. The better their output, the more money you'll make as a shareholder for this business. But it goes across board. The more you put the arts in sports, the greater return you get on folks that would never go to a sporting event. That's why I started the posters at Forward Madison. And New York Times had an article in 8 and 9 when Forward Madison 2019 was going to form. And the Portland Trailblazers were losing audience members, spectators, so they decided to do posters for the sports, for the basketball games. The attendance shot up because people were coming to the games to get the posters, that original artwork done by local artists. I said, I'm going to honor that by not stealing it, but I'll take the idea and present it here. And it worked, and that's what's happening. So we know it impacts our arenas on a high level. Can you make a lot of money? No, not really. Most of these artists work second jobs, third jobs, but it does impact the world in which we live. So as Roberto Rivera would say, if you don't give them a microphone, they're going to take something else to create havoc, But we need to find ways to engage our young people and provide opportunities for greater learning, because they all want to learn. No child wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be a nasty, bad child. They wake up and say, gosh, I hope I have breakfast. I'm hungry. What can I do about this or that? And we need to be, as leaders in our community, greater opportunities. And I think the arts are the answer. Poo-poo me as you wish, but that's the answer for me. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about Dane County and the arts in Wisconsin and Dane County. This has been The Layered Onion.